What's up, Nubians? Welcome to techn00bians, part of the Geekish Network. This is your weekly deep dive into video games steeped in blackness. For those of you who don't know, we're a live stream and podcast hosted by Black technology professionals where we discuss the what, when, and how you can get into this world of technology, specifically video games. I am your host, Cherie, and with me today, I've got our man with a million plans, Chuck.
What's up? What's up, everyone?
Our producer, sleuther, and deducer, Shanae.
Hey folks, I like how Chuck is back to a million plans, by the way.
I know.
I'm back to a million.
It was
back to a million.
1,000.
I had to take a week off. I was on vacation a week.
It was just 1,000 last week.
1,000. Now it's a million.
And bringing the energy too. I love it. And we've also got Travis.
Still last though.
Still last. I believe it is said the last shall be first.
I was waiting for somebody to say it.
Is Easter Sunday tomorrow, so let us just go ahead and bring that.
There you go.
Bring a little bit of the
Good Friday
spirituality
yesterday.
in. There we go.
Tomorrow.
Let it wash over you.
Yeah.
We are here every week to inspire, sustain, and nurture successful creative technologies in the pursuit of Black excellence and content development. Y'all, you know how we do this. We kick things off with the news, and then we do a long topic. This week for our long topic, we are talking game development economics 101. We're going to do some myth busting here today about what the cost is around like making games and different pieces of the product and stuff like that. I think it's going to be a fabulous conversation. I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to be here. So let's talk tech and gaming news. Let's kick this off with our news segment, Tech Newsians. So I just want to say, like, there was like a lot of random like little gaming news and stuff this week, but there was only one tech story. Only one.
What could it be?
Funny enough, we talked about this last week because, last week we had the story about Elon Musk where he had acquired 9.2% of Twitter.
Twitter.
that comes next.
That's a Freudian slip right there.
Yeah, that comes next of Twitter. And so, he was the largest shareholder and had been asked to join the board. And so I thought the story this week might be like, oh no, like Twitter, like he's decided not to join the board, whatever, right? No, because Elon Musk is like the poster child for troll culture. He was like, I just want to buy Twitter. I have an offer for $43 billion, billion. And that is $54.20 per share. Notice of 420. So he just wants to outright buy Twitter. And Twitter, interestingly enough, has kind of like they just gave a response for it. They're essentially trying to block it. They have implemented like essentially this procedure called that's referred to as like a poison pill, where if any like I think individual like shareholder reaches like 15%, buys at least 15% of the company, then like it triggers like this plan that allows other members of like certain members of the board to buy more of the stock. Basically, they're trying to prevent a hostile takeover. So this has become very interesting because it really feels like a fight now. And by the way, I should mention, Elon Musk, he also kind of went on like this TED talk that he did like right after he put in his offer to buy Twitter and said, I don't even know if I have the money to do it. So I'm like, dude,
and they don't think that he does. Like in terms of liquidity, they don't think that he does. So
he's trolling so hard, so we will see how this goes. I just, it's so much, for lack of a better word, reeks, I guess, of like the whole concept of like toxic fandom, right? The whole like 6 stages. I love this. I own this. I control this. I can't control this. I hate this. I must destroy this. I think he's getting to that I hate this, must destroy this part.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the last thing he mentioned is if Twitter doesn't accept his offer, he doesn't know. He might need to dump all his stocks that he just bought. So
that's how you destroy the company.
That's how you destroy the company right there.
Yeah, he would. Yes, like if even if he was successful in buying it, he would probably turn Twitter into a completely different place than Twitter is.
Yeah.
And if he can't buy it, he's clearly trying to tank their stock prices right now which would also destroy the company. So
What I say last week? I said, watch, he gonna become this super villain, right? I told you that. Right?
He's trying right there.
I mean, he's always been the kind of the super villain.
Yeah, but
yeah. I know folks were like making what was it? Several years ago, someone compared him to Tony Stark. I'm like, no, he's not Tony Stark. He's like Obadiah Crane. All right, like this is like you're in the right universe. You've got
He's like Thomas
characters.
Edison.
Yeah, he's a supervillain. He just has a few more flunkies than most supervillains have.
Yeah, he got some goons.
Just think about this. Think about this for a second. All right, Twitter is that company, right? And so basically, Elon Musk rolled over to Twitter and basically went, wait a minute. Can I buy y'all? Hold on. Let me. I mean, how you gonna pat yourself down and see whether or not you got enough to buy like one of the biggest tech giants on the planet? I mean,
and then admit that you probably don't, but you still put the offer in.
Yeah, I mean, he'll sell off SpaceX and all those government contracts he has. People care to forget he has a lot of money in government contracts and shipping. I mean, his family's known to ship emeralds out of Africa to around the world, so he has a lot of shipping lines. He'll leverage it somehow, or he'll get enough other billionaires to get behind him, and they'll help leverage it with him. I'm
just saying the caucasity behind.
Yeah.
I don't know whether or not I got enough. Hold on.
I don't even know. Yeah,
I don't even know. I'm going to buy you though.
And by the way, to dig into a little bit, like why people were very, very concerned with Elon, why marginalized folks were really concerned with Elon either joining the board or becoming the or owning Twitter. He has a very strong opinions about what he says are free speech opinions. This is the colloquial definition of free speech. This is not the actual First Amendment. But he believes that Twitter should essentially be a free speech message board. He's argued with the moderation attempts being imperfect. So he's like, yeah, we should just dump moderation, which is not a theoretical thing. Like we've all been on the internet when there were like even worse moderation attempts than there are now, and it's not a great place for anyone on this spectrum podcast right now. Anyone on the spectrum, but anyone on this podcast right now, it's not a great place. It's like that old thing where they used to say there are no women on the internet. Well, that would be a reality again.
He believes don't block anybody, let everybody have at it.
Oh, it's absolutely terrible, horribly toxic, more toxic than it is right now too, and that's not a place where anyone would want to spend their time, because that therein lies the path to insanity.
None of people that look like us.
Yes.
But for him, they do.
What this proves is, as far as I'm concerned, is how it's just not a compelling argument that people should be allowed to have that much money. Because you have these companies, and we discussed this before, how prevalent does a company have to be in order for it to be like declared a utility, right? Like people use this so much in their everyday lives that, you ascend from becoming, like just a company, and you become like a public utility. And when you have enough money to buy a public utility, somebody needs to check you.
Yeah.
Right. Like, even just having that amount of money, somehow seems like offensive. Right. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I joked last week. This is the equivalent of him buying an island, right? It's the board super rich person who's like, yeah, I'm just gonna buy entire swaths of land. Let me just own this country, essentially. And it's
buy a whole social media network.
Yeah, when you have like a massive amount of like economic power, you start to figure, you get bored enough because like what's that joke that they said with I think it was Warren Buffett. They asked him how much money is too much money, and his answer was like just a little bit more. When you get bored when you can just buy everything, so you're just like, well, let me see how I can turn that economic power into other forms of power. And that's what we're seeing right now is like we've seen a lot of like interference in political power, in social structures, and now the private interest. Like it's a good argument for more regulation, not less regulation.
Yeah, it's concerning, right? It's concerning because as much as I don't dig on Twitter, like a significant amount of I don't know what you would call them, the vocal majority or whatever, do use it, right? Enough so where cutting the 45 off from it really affected his ability to actually like preach his form of ignorance, right? And now if you figure someone could actually just reach into their back pocket and buy all the free speech they want, it's pretty scary.
Yeah. Let's talk about what Twitter really is. It's the fastest way to move the information around the world. Mm-hmm. Entire wars have started off through the Twitter. Rebellions have started off silent and open. You know, Hong Kong was able to mobilize and control the Chinese government with Twitter. Egypt was the same thing. In the Sudan and Jordan, it was the same thing as well. So he sees the power of that. Like, hold on, this thing topples governments. It topples governments. Why do I not want to own it?
Yeah, and the other thing I'll mention, the other thing I'll mention on this, by the way, is just this is another reason why I think this has kind of caused a lot of uproar. A lot of Twitter employees are understandably upset about this whole fiasco. Musk has already been sued by some stockholders because of the slowness of him reporting the purchase to the SEC. And Tesla's stock fell by 3% on Friday because of all of the antics that are happening. And like, where like this, the Tesla, some of the shareholders like that were upset because they're like, they feel like Elon is being distracted, distracted by by these other things he's trying to do. And it really is just, I mean, that's why I said I feel like it really is just like trolling, because it's just, I think we've gotten to that place where it's like, does he really need to buy Twitter? Is his speech really being oppressed? Like all the answers to these are no. But like
literally the richest man on the planet.
But he wants to he's literally the richest man on the planet. I mean, like he tweets random nonsense stuff and it makes, it hits 500 news agencies. So
and takes the stock market
takes the stock market.
But just to build on what Chuck said a second ago, that was interesting. One little addendum. Twitter is the fastest way to move information across the planet. It's also the fastest way to move disinformation, misinformation, and disinformation across the planet. And I think that's also a thing that's changed rapidly in the like possibly one of the most defining things of this era of our technological togetherness is that we've got access to all of the world's information like at your fingertips, and you'll also have access to all the disinformation, misinformation, and disinformation from folks who are sloppy and folks who are actually just bad actors who want to, shake things up. So, welcome to 2022.
Same as 2021, but like just
welcome to the new year.
Chaos modifier somewhere there.
It is 2022.
Yeah, is this correct? It's 2020 again.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the next story. Travis, you have a story for us.
Man, Epic Games receives not $1, but $2 billion in investment from Sony and Lego's parent company. So it says here on Engadget that Epic Games has received 2 big briefcases stuffed with cash that will help it advance the company's vision and build the metaverse and support continued growth. Now, it is not the first time that actually Sony invested in Epic. Just 2 years ago, well, not even 2 years ago, but in 2020, they gave Epic $250 million. And I guess that first date was so awesome that they decided, look, we got all this money hanging out. Why don't we just give it to you?
This one
it's so
8
crazy.
times as good.
I just good on them. Okay. Like it seemed like, ever since they decided to sue Apple, everybody has just decided to give them gobs of cash. Look, I love the Unreal Engine. I think it's a dope engine. And I think that finally they're doing all the right things that you should be doing as far as a middleware company is concerned, actually supporting all the people who license your product. And it's a pretty badass engine. I'm just wondering, like, what are they doing with $2 billion? Like, I want to know that they couldn't have done just yesterday. I mean, now it's just. I mean, come on, Sinead. Like, tell me.
They could probably put a bid in on Twitter.
Not with 2 billion. You need 40.
I mean, Elon doesn't have the
20 billion.
43 billion. He put
400. You need 420 billion. But I find it interesting because when Tencent bought into Unreal, they handed them $5 billion.
Yes.
And said, and here's a blank check for whenever you need it. Whenever you need it. Then they turned around and raised another $1 billion, just a raise, and said, we're going to create a mega grant program. We raised so much money, we're going to get money away.
They already bought them all. Already bought them all. So
it's like, you know what? We raised some more money. I guess we make the metaverse now.
I think what's gonna happen is Epic is just gonna own North Carolina. I think that's probably what it is. It's
probably
gonna buy all
Microsoft owns Washington. Yeah.
It's look,
Disney owns Florida. Yeah.
When you consider the shift that we have going into an embodied internet, an internet that has 3 dimensions, and them being, the single biggest provider of high quality 3D environments that you can interact in, it only stands to reason that you get good gobs of cash. But I'm just wondering, like, what's next? Because they got to move that weight somehow. Because you don't get it by just existing, and doing like Street Fighter, for example. I mean, you got to do something else. So, I mean, I don't know. Anybody have any ideas? Like, I personally think, like, they should use it to really, 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 really get into gaming. Oh, I'm sorry, into the TV. Like, when you consider how fast you can generate like assets nowadays.
But they have that with every studio. Every studio.
No, like really double down. I mean, like really take over. I think this, to me, now that I've been thinking about it, is this the anti-Unity cash injection that they need? Since
I think what I think they should do.
Go for
I
it.
think they should give money to people of color studios and have them make their damn games instead of them running around begging for money don't even get the crumbs to make just a version 1 of their games.
Oh, I didn't know it was fantasy story time.
I'm just saying they got $2 billion, and I know enough people of color, particularly Black people, that make games that have the game ideas but no cash to start a studio. So I think they should take that, not mega granite, black granite, and actually hand it out to people to make studios and tell their stories in film and television. Give it to Black creatives.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm down with that too. But just to go to Travis's question, one thing that we're missing from this. These goo gobs of cash, it wasn't just from Sony, it was from Lego. Right? So yeah, this sounds like this is a Roblox play.
Yeah, they already said that.
I mean, like,
in
and
their
the thing is, I don't know.
That was my slow pitch. By the way, I was like, come on now.
Of course, this is a Roblox play. And by the way, if you were like me and you sort of like you looked at Roblox and then you blinked and you haven't looked at Roblox in like the last like several weeks, months. Roblox is a full-fledged game engine, y'all. Like it is a competitor, and the fact that Epic sees it as one, it's like that too. So it's going to be really interesting. I mean, the same thing sort of happened with we saw the growth and the transition from of what where Fortnite started as this like cute, quaint little like shooter, and then suddenly added building, and then suddenly took over the world, and then suddenly took over esports, and then suddenly you're like, wait a second, is that Travis Scott? Are you doing a concert in here? Like, what?
Ariana Grande.
What is this game right now? Oh, it's not a game anymore. It's a platform. Oh, the word metaverse has come up now. Now it's a metaverse. Like it's like it has moved so far from its initial roots. Same thing for Roblox. So I think there's some really exciting stuff there. I couldn't even imagine like what they're gonna do next with it, but I think it's something to definitely watch.
Here's if you were asking me, which I'm asking myself. So,
let me ask you. Wait, what should I ask you?
Go ahead, ask me, Sinead.
Travis, what do you think they're going to spend all those goo gobs on?
Well, I mean, so Lego really, at least when I grew up, when I was growing up, it was like where your imagination went, right? Where you can build things, and and it was limitless because they were just building blocks, right? And so now, I think that Lego as a company is seeing where creativity is, and creativity is expressing itself in metaverse. It is expressing itself in 3D engines, and the building blocks that people are using now are voxels. They're not. They're no longer just Lego building blocks. If they want to stay at the cusp of creativity, and they see where it's moving to, then I think it's natural that they should try to stake their claim in the metaverse. And if you can somehow combine that with the Lego blocks that they sell, so much the better. I am always amazed when I see like younger kids like manipulating 3D assets and platforms, and so because they pick it up so much faster than we do, right? And so so I for one am excited because I think like this is where you'll see Lego 10 years from now, in the building blocks for the metaverse.
Yeah. Well, they've already announced that when they did that announce of UE5, they said, hey, we're building the metaverse for children with Legos. Mm-hmm. And then they said, hey, Lego just handed us $1 billion check. The fact that Legos can hand $1 billion check to one company is saying a lot.
And that's Legos too. You're just like, wait a second. Wait, Legos?
I mean,
Lego don't be playing
everywhere though. I mean, they got theme park money, so
yeah, they do have theme park money.
Yeah. They just don't throw it around and try and buy Twitter every other day. So I don't really think about Legos that much.
Listen, as long as with whatever Epic does with this money, as long as they don't try and stick an MLK, any more MLK tribute, in the middle of Fortnite, like the Grinch and like just Black Panther, and Spider-Man,
you want that. You want a spider web all around MLK statue.
No, you
want to do. You want to shoot people on top of it.
You don't want to be shooting anything.
Little black boys get shot by alien gumdrop heads.
We're gonna follow Will Smith's example and be like, keep MLK's name
out your mouth. Yeah, real.
Okay, let's go on to the next story. Sinead, you got a story for us.
I do have a story. I don't know if you guys know. We're still in the middle of a pandemic, right? Right?
No, I thought it was over with. I thought we said
from what I'm seeing, it must be over. Okay, so Riot Games, you guys might be familiar with them, makers of League of Legends, among other things, just announced that they're going to be dropping their vaccination requirements and their masking requirements for employees that they are bringing back into the office. So return to office, RTO, as those of us in the know refer to it as. They're gonna be bringing everyone back to the office, requiring them to come back to the office, but they're dropping all those mandates. And employees reportedly aren't particularly happy about it. There's various quotes that are going around and stuff as well. Riot's response is like, hey, we're following the guidance from the state of California, which they are, because the state of California just recently also dropped their indoor masking mandates. And also a lot of places don't require proof of vaccination the way that they did last year. And then also just to add to that, there was a leaked email that Activision Blizzard was also dropping their vaccination requirements. But then there was a bunch of backlash on social media and a virtual walkout, and then they rolled back on that and said, oh, okay, individual studios can decide for themselves. But this is something that's it's been a pretty common discussion, I think, among those of us who will be returning to offices or have already returned to offices. I know I have strong feelings. There's literally 2 masks in this room right now, and I'm the only one in this house. So this is
wear against yourself. To wear it against yourself.
This is the thing that we're gonna have to deal with again, right? Because COVID is endemic now, but endemic doesn't necessarily mean that we should just pretend that
it's gone away.
We shouldn't take any precautions against it.
Our U.S. government has agreed that the mask mandates are not necessary because COVID has gone away. It's endemic, not pandemic.
I think that as much as I, or we collectively have been after Riot for rightfully some shenanigans. I don't know, maybe this is unfairly targeting them at this point, right? Like they are following the law, right? And other companies in California, if they're following the law, probably have to do the same thing.
Well, it's I'm not trying, like, this is part of why I said, like, also you saw this in Activision.
Sure.
There's lots of companies that are dealing with this right now too.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says you can't mandate it. It just says that, hey, our recommendations are you don't need to do this, but every company can decide for itself. So there's nothing that says the state of California is requiring this change or anything. And based on what I'm seeing in New York with numbers, there's always a new variant, y'all. I just learned the names of the 2 new variants today. They've lost all the sexiness. We had Delta, we had Omicron, now we got BA2 was the most recent one. The most recent ones are BA212 and BA212.1. So
it sounds like Star Wars droids.
Starting to become like a social security number or something.
Okay, BA2 and 12.
Beta 12.
I mean, I feel like
1.
Yeah, I feel like this is.
Why aren't you at your post?
There's XE, Xerox.
I feel like this is kind of a cop out, though. I mean, I get it. Like they can say we're following the guidance or we're following the guidance, whatever, right? But like there's all sorts of laws that like companies follow the law, but then they do extra stuff on it, right? I mean, the fact that like they allow, they'll follow like, oh, these different, I don't know. There's just all sorts of perks that companies give, or all sorts of like concessions they give.
That's true.
And just given that like the thing that just drives me crazy, I guess, is that like we keep wanting to rush back to this normal, like this concept of normal, right? And we keep doing things that will take us farther away and make it much harder for us
to get back.
Yeah,
because we're children.
You should just admit it. I think, is that what you're saying? Like, you should just admit it, right? It is a different work environment now.
Yeah,
right?
That normal is gone. Like that normal is not coming back. I mean, we talked about GDC last week, right? Which was sort of like a little microcosm. I mean, it's a video game industry conference, and we're talking about video game companies. And like it kind of felt like there were a lot of folks talked online about how like, oh, it feels like feels like we're back to normal again. This GDC, it's like was so great meeting people, and then we saw
everybody fall out with COVID.
Yeah, it turned into a little bit of a super spreader event. So
yeah,
it's
I just want to know one thing.
A lot of companies are struggling with this right now, and a lot of employees are sort of feel like they're between a rock and a hard place of like, hey, I don't want to risk my health, but I also don't want to quit my job. And I also want to get back to like, there's nobody who doesn't want to get back to normal. Like, isn't
that the crazy part though, when you think about it, Sinead, right? Like, it is my job that provides me the means by which I can actually ensure my health. But it is my job that is actually making me risk my health.
Thousands of essential workers just agreed with you.
Yeah.
2.5 years, right?
Yeah.
And I know that we're in a place of privilege because like we were able to work from home like during majority of this thing, and so all of those of us who were able to work from home are now just now having to grapple with this situation of like, what happens with me going into like, do I have to go into the office? Like, how's it going to affect my health? Like those sorts of fears. Whereas like a lot of frontline workers and so-called essential workers, they already, that ship already sailed for them.
So day one.
By the way. Speaking of that, let's jump on the Chuck story because that's also really relevant.
Yeah. Speaking of working from home, Bungie says we're going digital first. That means many future roles will be fully remote. Announcing on Friday, the company said we're going digital first. That means most current and future roles will be fully remote across a range of states. They have it set that you can be anywhere in the world and around the states. As long as you work for us and deliver on time, we don't care. Matter of fact, you don't have to come in the office. We have a 600-person team. We don't want to pay that electric bill no more. We're so over that electric bill. We have to think a lot of managers want people to come back to work because they don't do any real work in the job. They make decisions and they want to say, I own all these people, so I work. They come to me with questions and I have to give approval and answers. A lot of managers like that. And doing it over Zoom is not the same as walking around and saying, I own all these people. That's what gives me validity and validates my job. Then they get emails telling them what's going on so they can report it up. So it's really interesting to see that Bungie's like, you know what? we're not going to bring people back. No,
Yeah.
we're good with that.
You know, it's interesting because like I remember back in the day when I was at EA and like people would ask, "Oh, can I do this job from home?" And they're like, "Absolutely not. You cannot do this job from home. It is impossible to do this job from home."
Yep.
And, like all it took was a global pandemic for everyone to be like reevaluate.
And they can all do it at home.
Impossible, but did I really mean I'm possible?
I'm possible. Now it's now it's interesting though, because now we've like, you know, we've moved from okay, we're figuring out how to work from home by necessity to now like, hey, we're actually just gonna have fully virtual, you know, full like game companies, fully digital first game companies, and going with that kind of a model. It's interesting because I mean, obviously there's definitely a desire for that for a lot of workers. We've seen like a lot of workers have, you know, they've made adjustments and they like the work-life balance, I'll say, that you know, certain models like that can give them. So it's kind of interesting to see a big company like Bungie doing that.
I think it's kind of great. Like they're setting a precedence and going ahead and ripping the Band-Aid off, because I feel like a lot of companies are sort of pushing for RTO because that's what they think they're supposed to do, because that's what will get us back to that normal feeling that we had before. And there are a lot of people who have this feeling of like, I want to go into an office and have it be bustling and humans, and I look and I survey my domain, and they like that feeling. Like, you know what, honestly, I liked working in an office. I liked working alongside other people. But that said, there's trade-offs and stuff. And if we really wanted this 2 years ago, we should have worn our masks to begin with. But yeah, I think what we're finding is that whereas like 2 years ago, before the pandemic, people thought it was impossible to ship these AAA and quad A sized games, hundreds of millions of dollars, thousands of people. They would have thought it was impossible to do. They were forced to do it or just cease to exist. So they found a way. Life found a way. And people actually, they sort of enjoy the flexibility it allows them to like to not have to drive, you know, commute 45 minutes into an office, to be able to be at home with family or, you know, or pets or whatever, and just have that flexibility of being more in your community, the place where you live, and working from your community. It also, incidentally, I think opens up a lot of opportunities for folks who don't want to or can't afford to move to the big tech hubs that exist in America, right?
Yes.
Like, you know, before the pandemic, where'd you have to live? San Francisco, Seattle, New York, Austin,
LA.
Austin, yeah.
You know, there's like a handful of very expensive cities that you had to be within commuting distance of to work in this industry, and that's just not the case anymore. So, I mean, I think it's going to be it's been a rocky transition. It's going to continue to be hard for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, but I think the net positive in the end is worth it, especially if we say we care about diversity, by the way, just as an aside.
Yeah.
I think if you don't facilitate work from home, you're going to quickly find yourself out of business. For companies where you have to work your mind, right? Being able to hire from anywhere is huge. It's huge. I've lost a lot of, you know, would be, you know, employees because they didn't want to move or because they had to move.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, my parents got sick, or you know, or I just don't like this area, or you know, I mean, I've turned down jobs because I didn't want to move to a new area, and things like that. Now that's not necessarily the case.
Yes.
And I think that instead of fighting against that trend, you know, companies should embrace it. They should embrace it, because there's nothing. I feel like there's nothing but upside, to be to be honest with you, because everyone else is doing it, and because everyone else is doing it, you're going to be forced to adapt or suffer the consequences. And so that's why, at least, you know, and I'm looking for that new normal that we keep talking about to like settle in on people, right? Like it's going to happen. You know, I don't know. It's probably going to take another year or something like that for people to understand like this is the new market. But I think that it provides a lot of advantages that, you know, that people, you know, just don't realize. Yes, we do save money when we don't have to commute anymore. Yes, you know, my commute is not an hour anymore. It's literally 15 seconds, right? Like, you know, there's a lot of advantages to this. And you know, most people will work at their desk at home. I know I do.
And
right?
work at odd hours.
Right. And you work at odd hours and you don't have to go like, oh, I left that at the office, or I left that at home. You're there already, right?
Feels like you can fit work into your life instead of fitting life into
around your work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
The number of people I know in Los Angeles in particular that have children that go to different schools around town and have to leave work at 3 or 4 o'clock to go to a child event is high. What's the point of making them do that? Like the fact that there's parents that don't even see their children at dinners. They see them before they go be tucked into bed is wild to me.
You know what it is? I think it's that, we've done that for so long that we couldn't imagine a world in which that wasn't just the thing that we did.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we were forced into a world where that was a thing we couldn't do. And people kind of like it. They're just like, wait a second, I kind of like not having to do all of that, not having these additional pressures or having to get work till 10 p.m. and knowing I still have an hour commute after that. Like people actually realized a different world is possible. And really sorry to the global pandemic to get us here, but like, why fight it? Go ahead.
And to wrap this up, at least as far as I'm concerned, right? Like working from home, used to be a privilege. And I think it is quickly moving to a right. Okay.
Yes.
And so once that transition really happens, that's when all of this is really going to settle down.
Yep, you should embrace it. Speaking of Twitter was one of the first companies to embrace work from home. It was Jack Dorsey saying nobody ever has to come back into the Twitter office ever again. It was 6 months in the pandemic. He was like, we're not getting out of this. Oh, they said we're gonna get out in 2 months. We've been in it 6.
And then it was Elon Musk who was tweeting 5 seconds later, hey, should we turn the Twitter offices into a how do you say it? I think he said talked about turning them into a homeless shelter because nobody's coming into the office anyway.
Yeah, that's what he did.
Right.
Maybe he just doesn't like Jack Dorsey.
I think
he's like, yeah, Jack, I'm going to buy your
so
empire since you vacated it, moved to Africa,
and
I'm about to ruin it.
Yeah, I think he just likes causing drama. So, all right. Speaking of drama, let's get to the main topic here. So today we want to talk about game development economics. We want to talk about some myth busting in our game development economics, right? And in particular, when I'm talking about like myth busting, I think we've probably all seen different conversations that kind of come around on a regular basis. There's a conversation about DLC, like why am I getting charged for DLC? This is just a piece of the game that the developers cut from the game just to charge me more later on. Or we've seen, the conversation about like digital versus packaged goods. Like, why do digital games cost the same amount as packaged goods when you don't have to, you don't have any actual like materials and stuff like that. You don't have the boxes and actual physical media that ships along with it. Just different things that we kind of hear, like these conversations that come around pretty regularly, I think, within the gaming community. And I thought it might be a good, this might be a good chance for like some folks who are like actually on like the other side. I mean, still in the gaming community, obviously, but like actually like doing the development to talk a little bit about some of these, I think misconceptions, I'll kind of say, with regards to like how the economics of game development works. So maybe a place for us to start here is like I said, the two big conversations. DLC is like is the one that I hear all the time about why do I have to get charged for DLC? And if you play anything other than like probably Nintendo titles, you probably get charged for DLC pretty regularly. And the digital versus packaged goods one, those are the two I hear all the time. I just want to hear what folks have to say about this. I mean, why is it that let's just start off with this. Why do digital and packaged goods cost the same amount? Or at least, why do we charge the same amount? Let me ask.
I think it's we've been undercharging for packaged goods forever. I am this December I'll be 52 years old. I have been paying $60 for games since I was a child. What can you say that about anything?
Yeah.
You see, and and I'm sorry to say, but the level of complexity that the games had in 1970s versus now is infinitely infinitely.
I don't know what you're
more
talking
complex.
about. Listen, Fortnite and ET had the exact same level of complexity, exact same design number of designers and developers on staff.
I've been paying the same amount for McDonald's cheeseburger for the last 30 years. I don't know.
It's because you're a dollar menuer, man.
I'm just
I
mean, there was like a brief period, I guess, where I remember like games jumping up to like about, if I was like Nintendo, Super Nintendo era, games jumping up to like $70, $75.
I paid $90 for a couple of games, but that was because we were in this weird, like there was a lot of regional pricing. We were in this weird space too. We were paying for cartridges. The cost of cartridges just exploded the cost of games for quite some time.
I remember when Strider came out. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
Oh no, go ahead.
And it was like one of the first, was it 16-bit or 32-bit games. And I paid an additional $10 to get that little yellow chip on the end of my Sega Genesis cartridge. Because it was like 32-bit game, the first one. I bought it the day it came out. And I was like, yeah, this game's so good because it's 32-bit. I had no idea what that meant. I was a middle school kid.
The marketing worked. The marketing
blast processing,
32-bit game.
Yeah. So let's talk about though, why is it? I mean, I know you mentioned, like you said, that we should be charging more, right? And we've been paying the same amount for the most part, or at least in the same vicinity for decades for games. But I think we're not talking about like, well, I guess that's one conversation, right? Like the cost of games, like what we've been charging people, hasn't really changed significantly, right? People are paying about $60 for just the base games and stuff like that. Pretty much across platforms. Why is it? So we talk about that, but then also why is it that there's not a difference between digital and packaged goods specifically in terms of the cost?
Well, I mean, simply put, like just going to what Travis was mentioning a second ago, the amount of money it costs to make a video game is like your average AAA quad A video game. Let's not even talk about your Fortnites, which are just their own platforms like that too. We're easily in $100 million, $200 million territory. Games are really expensive. And a lot of that development cost is overhead. It's overhead, it's payroll, and it's technology. It's like those three things are like huge. Specifically like the, when we're creating games, I have like my whole P&L, my budget and everything that I have to align to try and hopefully balance out like, hey, this is how much I'm going to spend and this is how many copies we're going to sell and this is how much we're going to make from that. Well, right now, even if we sold only digital versions or only physical versions, like if we didn't bifurcate the delivery mechanism, it was just, let's say it's all packaged goods like it used to be back in the day, you're still like, these things still aren't equaling out. Like you're spending more money for development than you are bringing in. And this goes into the conversation about DLC and microtransactions and other things that also help bolster and set aside the amount of money that you're spending on this. So enter the world where we're already not making back the money that we're investing to make a game. We're already selling it below the cost that it should be at, even for packaged goods. Well, yes, like when I'm now the digital world opens up, I can sell games digitally, which does save me a little bit of money on the distribution side of it because I don't have to do what we call COGS, which is cost of goods and services. I don't have to create a manual which I send to a printer. I don't have to get little plastic boxes. I don't have to do I don't have to do that. So it saves me a little bit of money, but it's still saving money, and I'm already still selling at a loss.
Yeah.
So it's really what's happening. I'm sorry for folks, is like really what's happening is that somewhat digital folks are helping to subsidize the cost of physical distribution as well. But even still, even like with those being at the same cost, we're still not making up the amount of money it costs to make a single video game. That's why you see this push towards push away from, like in the AAA and quad A space, there's a push away from just doing single one-off games. Because most of the time when you do a single one-off game, the cost of the investment you have to make and technology, like all that kind of stuff, is really expensive. And you're probably not going to get a return on investment on that single game. You may get a return on investment on that second game, which you build on top of all the technology that you had in the first game. Because content creation is a lot cheaper than the actual basics, like the foundational technology you have to create for your game. So yeah, you want to make game one and you spend all that money to try and build everything and figure out all the problems and stuff like that. And then when you make game two, you're like, cool, we're going to iterate a little bit on some of the features and we're going to iterate a little bit on some of the gameplay. And then we're going to just make a whole bunch more content content creation is functionally much cheaper than the actual technological basis creations like that. And that way you start getting to a point where you can sort of hint at making your money back probably around game 2, maybe game 2.5 or 3. And that also that sort of dovetails in the conversation about like things around DLC, like why we make DLC, why DLC is not free. It's not free for us to make, so we have to charge for it as well. And why you try and come up with these creative ways to also sort of bolster and get that return on investment that you're not getting from just selling a single game at below cost.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes a whole lot of sense. Travis, I got a question for you. Since you've been making games since the 1840s,
Yes.
I was kind of curious, like, what do the budgets look like back then compared to the budgets today for gaming?
Well, back when we just had abacuses.
Yeah.
Trading sheep.
Yeah, you were trading sheep.
It was like $2. It was like $2. Make a game for $2. Honestly, like when I started making games, like your really high budget games were maybe $500,000, maybe. And that was Game Boy, Game Gear, Super Nintendo, Genesis, time period. And to be quite honest, every time you get a level of when you start to simulate things at a deeper level, everything gets exponentially more expensive. Every time. If you go back and look at GoldenEye, for example, or you go and look at Doom, for example, like what are these places? Right? We used to just call them levels, right? Like, and that was nice because levels meant that you really didn't have to simulate reality that much, right? And so it was just a box. You ran around in this box, and all of a sudden people started asking questions. They started asking questions like, what is this box? Oh, it's a headquarters. Okay, then where are the bathrooms? Where are the front doors? Where are the, where are all the plumbing? Where, and so as you start to simulate reality, it never ends. Okay. And that means that you're going to have to employ people who know that, so it's no longer that it's no longer good enough that you're a level designer. You need to be an architect. You need to be a designer. You need to be an interior designer. You need to start hiring these people who have these expertise to make your reality simulation even that much better so that they are believable. And what does that do? That adds to cost. That's no longer $500,000. Now you're in the millions. Now you're in the multiple millions, right? And now when you start looking at games, sometimes we have games that sometimes rival TV shows or movies as far as their effects and so on and so forth. So they will cost that much, right? It's a slippery slope, and it never ever ends. And so now when you're building these games, just like Shanae said, right? If you have hired these interior designers, these makeup artists, these actors and actresses and so on and so forth, right? And you've got all these assets that you spend years actually making. You're like, hang on, you ain't in one game, nah, player. You in like 5.
Putting you in there. I'll do a palette swap.
Yeah.
Just the texture. Maybe a slight variation on the silhouette. But
we talk about
money.
So when you start seeing these DLCs, you start looking at other ways that these game companies are making their money. They're trying to build intelligently so that they can iterate, so that they can give you these new things. But it's not a computer that's giving you these things. They're real people who are making real alterations to this code and giving you things on a daily basis. Like when you go to Denny's and work, you don't expect, you don't expect people to like not pay for their pancakes or their hash browns, right? So
what if I just really like making pancakes and hash browns? Shouldn't I just do that for free?
Well, actually you can, and you're called a modder, and you can do whatever you like. You can mod you can mod your pancakes forever. You know what I'm saying? Just buy the original pancake, and we don't care what you do at your table.
One thing we don't think about, we talk about the visual effects of movies and stuff. Like everybody talked about Game of Thrones, the dragons. Oh my God, the visual effects of dragons. I'm thinking, you saw those dragons on screen for 10 minutes out of 8 seasons. 10 minutes they were on screen the whole entire time. In a video game, you want to play The Witcher or you play Elden Ring, that dragon lives in that game the whole entire time and has to think and counter to what you do. It's like on a screen. So when you tell me like, oh, it costs Game of Thrones $80 million, I'm like, what do you think it costs in a video game?
Thank you.
What do you think it costs in a video game? That dragon has to live in the video game. On Game of Thrones, it's a puppet. It's a puppet. It's told what to do one time, and that's all it does.
Just as an aside, by the way, Travis, one of my favorite bugs to ever enter or read when I was doing QA was this building has no bathrooms. Because it was such a common thing. It's like, someone would go through this poor level designer would go through and they create this architect, this gorgeous, environment, this, that, and you're like, wait, there's something missing here. You're trying to simulate reality.
I have to poop.
There's no bathroom in this. There's something missing that just missing.
And you have to build bathrooms.
This is one of the things that I think, I mentioned that content is much cheaper to create than tech. It's not cheap though. It's cheaper, but not cheap, right? And I think there's a sort of misconception about what it takes to make a AAA video game and stuff as well, because simply put, and I'm glad we're in this world that we're in, there's so much access to tools, to assets, to like communities, to 3D modeling technology and animation, like it's way more access than there was when Travis and I were growing up and Cherie and Chuck were growing up. And that's great, but I think it also sort of distorts people's understanding and perception of what it costs to actually make those things. Yeah, there's so much access to free stuff. Listen, I know the Unity store has plenty of free assets. I can't grab Unity's free assets and put them in that I'm going to be shipped, my commercial product I'm going to be shipping. No. First of all, you'd get reamed for doing it, but secondly, you get what you pay for, honestly. And there are people who do this professionally and create professional work, and that's actually necessary. And yes, even though we love making games, would I do it for free? Not and be able to pay my mortgage. Right? I would do, I could do, yes, would I make video games for free if I had a different job, a different day job that would allow me to
if you had some Elon Musk money, then sure. But I would just be bored and just make video games and then maybe buy another social media network.
We have this tendency when we talk about creative industries and creative careers that in our brains, for some reason, we still think of them as hobbies. Yeah. And it's this is not a hobby, right? Yeah. For professional game developers and professional artists, professional creators, they do it. That's their day job, right? And they have to get paid for their day job. In order to pay them for their day job, we have to sell the commercial art that we make. That includes not only the video games, like the base game itself, which I guess, once again, I said we do sell at a loss. Man, if you look at some of those P&Ls, it's actually very, very, very terrifying. We do sell them at a loss, but it also is that's why things like DLC exist. That's why you see these creative ideas, sometimes not so great ideas, but a lot of companies came up with ideas like MTX, like microtransactions and loot boxes and collector's editions. That's why collector's editions exist. Not because we're you really want to have a statue of Soldier 76, right? No, it's because you're going to pay $100 for that. And that's about $8 above what I spent to make my game. And now I can take that $8 and I can add it to the pool to offset the hundreds of millions of dollars that I invested in actually making this game.
So can I mention real quick? So we've talked about DLC, we've talked about some of those things, loot boxes and stuff like that. What other things are developers doing to try to kind of make up that, that loss there for games?
Well, I will be, this is the best way to look at it. Okay. There's an agreement between customers now and companies that make games that are live, that have live components. Okay. And that you're almost never done. Okay. And as long as you have fans that continue to actually play your game, then you should never be done. Right. Yeah. Now, in order for this to work correctly, people have to get paid. Right. And so all those ideas that you come up with are not necessarily bad ideas. A lot of times, those are ideas that the game developers have had previously, want to do, but don't have the time to do. Okay, or don't have the support in order to do. Okay, and so when you're calling or you're emailing or you're posting on these company sites and saying, how about this? How about this? How about that? Those are great things, and you should continue to do that as customers, because we really dig that as far as in our industry. But it doesn't end there, okay? Because what you're doing is you're making a list of things for people to do at work, okay? And usually, the cooler they are, the more difficult they are to actually accomplish, and the higher you have to, or the more you have to pay a gifted individual in order to make those things actually happen. Okay, so gamers understand, it just doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from highly skilled individuals figuring out like what your game can stand, what it can't stand, what it can do, what it can't do, and how to get there. Okay, and those are highly technical things. Those are things that you can't snap your fingers and make them happen.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have to pay for them.
Yeah.
And and whether or not you will be happy with that, look, you're going to determine how you're going to determine that by whether or not you buy it or not, right? And so if it's a good trade, then you'll continue to see it, and if it's not, you won't see it anymore.
Yeah. All right, Chuck, did you have anything that you can kind of add on to that?
Oh yeah, so now like Microsoft is now exploring ads. That's something to offset the games, but I think they're doing it for subscription services, right? Now subscription services come along, and I have to agree with most Def. Now you're getting paid a fraction of what the game actually cost. If you're paying $15.99 a month for your subscription service, and you play 6 games, each of those games are getting less than $3 a piece.
Yeah.
And so now you're playing a full game, and they're making way less money than they would if they just sold you the fully digital version or the hard box version of the game, the hard copy of the game. So they have to offset that. Plus, Microsoft realizes they want to have everybody playing in their ecosystem of Game Pass. So we're going to run some ads, probably a ticker bar, throw an ad discreetly into the game, and allow you to play for free, because there's a lot of players. They may have just got enough money to buy a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox One, Series X, whatever Xbox they have, and they just want to play a game. They don't have a lot of money. They want to play a bunch of games.
Yeah.
Well, this allows them to do so. This turns gaming into like a television network, a public television network. Yeah. And if you want the private non-ad version, you pay a subscription fee for it. And I'm all for that. But I do realize at the end of the day, who suffers the most are the developers, because now you have developers splitting that $15 across the number of titles of each individual subscriber to that service, which impacts them. So if I play just one game a month, fine. That one game gets my full $15. That sounds great. I'm just speaking in generalities. But if I play 12 games or 15 games in the month, that means that $15 goes $1 goes roughly to each developer.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to any developer at the end of the day. Like most dev complains about getting paid fractions of a penny to play his songs. And he's like, that's why I don't stream any of my music, because I know it costs me a lot more just to make that song than fractions of a penny.
So I'm actually gonna go stream Black on Both Sides right after this. Someone's streaming his music. You gotta get off that Spotify contract. All right, awesome. This is a fabulous conversation. I know we could talk about this for forever, y'all. Because, I mean, it is very complicated for sure. We get it. I mean, like, games are complicated to buy, just to continue to buy and continue to keep up with the technology. Very expensive. I was actually thinking when you said, Chuck, when you mentioned like, people buy a game system, they might not have a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, after you paying $600 and $700 for game systems, you sure, even if you had a lot of money before, you don't now because you just got the platform.
You need game system, the place to actually like set it up and everything like that. This stuff's not cheap. It's not a cheap hobby.
Yeah, so it's very complicated to kind of like work out the economics to make sure that there are lots of different ways and to be accessible, right? You know, for people who want to buy a ton of games, reserve every game that's coming out on every platform every month, or folks who are like, I just want to pay, you know, play 1 or 2 games or something like that a year. It takes a lot, you know. It's very complicated. It's a lot more complicated than just like, you know, good or bad management, good or bad games, stuff like that. But I'm sure we will come back to this conversation. I love this conversation. So thanks everybody for your contributions. I want to give a shout out to Digital Click for all the creative they provide for us for each and every show. If you want to learn more about Technubians, then hit us up at technubians.com. That's techn00bians.com. Please follow us on all our socials. And if you like our vibe, and we know you do, and you want to learn more about game development and everything geek, please like and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are listening. Also, share our content. All of season 1 and season 2 episodes are streaming now. Please also follow the Geekish Network on all major platforms, and come see what else geek we're talking about this upcoming week on the Geekish Network. This Monday, we're going to have Pod Squadron at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, followed by Geek Beast at 7:30 p.m. And thank you all so much for watching. We will see you all next time.